The timer has now begun. Don't get me wrong, I'm questioning why I'm writing this or even telling you about it. But the last couple of days have just been too crazy. And if the next 2 days are to be our last, I may as well tell you what happened. Just wanted to say hi. Was the subject of an email that I received after work. I had gotten home, fed the dog, and just opened my laptop when it came into my inbox. Obviously spam, but who knows, so I clicked it. I saw nothing, just a blank white screen where writing should have been. I closed it and I thought nothing more. An hour passes, another chime, another email. I go check, but there's no email. But oh, what's this? That same email from before is still there. Now it's marked unread. That's odd. I click it, white, and I think a little of it, and then I close it again. Now it's around midnight and I'm about to pass out on my couch after binging Netflix. Another chime. I check the phone. The email is bold. Now I'm starting to wonder. Before I can even open it, I hear some rustling outside. I figure it's the neighbor's cat. I open the email. Get the door. A heavy knock hits my front door just as I'm reading it. More like a thud, really. I jump back, startled. I reach for the closest thing that I can find, which is a butter knife. If I hadn't nearly shat myself, I guess the image would have been funny. I stood there, waiting, hardly breathing. Minutes and then probably over an hour. Just frozen in fright. No other sounds. Then in the silence of the night, a chime. I creep towards my phone. And that bold message is just sitting there, just like it was before. I open it. You had your chance. Before I can process the words, a timer pops up on my screen. It's been ticking away steadily. I can't get it off on my screen. It comes up randomly. 2 days I've just been waiting for another knock. I blew off work. I blew off everything. There's no knock yet though. Don't get me wrong, it could be a prank. I have a couple awful friends I could think of that may have tried something like this, but somehow I'm not too optimistic. Well, it's been another day. The timer's been funny. The hours don't always line up. Last night there was 70 or so left, and today it's 86 and counting. I'll tell you, I've been trying to look into this on my own. But here's the point that I'm getting at. I can't. I have a couple good ideas about what may be happening, but every time I try to search for anything even remotely related to my hunches, I just get shut down by the timer. I can still get on YouTube, however. It hasn't helped me until now. You all know how primitive the search option is here, but I came up with something. You. Yes, you. Each of you can help me. I know YouTube sleuthing doesn't always pan out, but you're my last hope. I'm basically a prisoner in my own home right now. And if I can't get to the bottom of this, when that timer hits 0, I don't know what will happen. I moved into this house about 7 years ago. I relocated for work. I'm in environmental research, particularly methane, and I oversee a lot of prospecting projects in the Midwest. Well, I had noticed a few sites, one of which was off a reservation near eastern Oklahoma. There were a lot of disputes, but ultimately the land was federal and we went ahead with the survey. But something happened that's rattled me a bit even then. I was out at a bar the night we got the go-ahead in this small local town. A very quiet bar, kind of a dive really. It was called the Lakota. I had had a couple of drinks when the bartender handed me a glass. He said that it was on the house. I think, okay, well that's pretty nice. I've been tipping him, so maybe he's reciprocating. He calls it the Han. I asked him what the hell that means. Han, he says. It's a strong little local flavor for you. Not one to be rude, I drink it. Man, it tasted like jet fuel. I'd never had anything like it before or after. It burned down my whole throat, and for hours afterward it felt like I had some gnarly acid reflux. I chalked it up to dinner and I didn't think much of it. But since then, I've occasionally felt this strange sensation in my chest. It's almost like my chest has little feathers in it, tingling. When I cough, it sounds like I've got a whole pillow stuffed under my breastplate. I had been to the doctor plenty of times for it and they don't see anything. It's also not here all the time. Maybe every couple weeks or so I'll get that strange tingling feeling, like a muffled kind of pressing inside my chest. But I don't want to digress forever here. The point I'm making is that I'm certain now that that drink had something to do with all of this. Or at the very least, it's a huge clue. I've tried getting on Google and looking as much as I can, but so far no luck. All I can tell you is that he called it Han, and he said that it wasn't something he made often. The bottle that he got it from too told me it was something very special. It was mid-shelf at the bar and it was always under the Midori. I wish I remembered everything he said, but I do know for sure he was clear that somehow it had to be under the Midori, that it couldn't be anywhere else in his or any bar that served it. Please help me. Tell me what you found. I need to find a way out of this. I can't type more right now, but I will. But understand that if I don't get help on this, I'm done for. I'm begging you. I didn't get an ounce of sleep last night, and believe me, I tried. I tossed and turned, and I found myself staring intently at that damn timer. I know now that it doesn't seem to count with any normal rhythm or beat. As comments were coming in from all of you, I first saw it happening. It sped up. Seconds started flashing by. Sometimes 10 or 15 minutes would pass in just a moment. And then a chime and a message. Again, only a subject line. They can't help you. I jumped up from bed and I ran into the living room. Why, I can't say. I just needed to be as far away from my laptop as possible. That's when, bleary-eyed and exhausted, I saw it. In front of my living room window, inside of the house, there stood a shape that I still can't find the words to describe. It nearly reached my ceiling, and it was oblong and vaguely humanoid, but it lacked definition in every sense of the word. I froze and it hovered there. It hardly moved, but I felt it staring into me. And at that moment, my chest cramped up and it felt like somebody had stuffed cotton down my throat. Like some nightmarish Build-A-Bear. I couldn't breathe. I felt my lungs expanding and contracting so fast. Thinking back on it, I must have been hyperventilating. But no matter how hard I tried, I didn't feel the slightest whiff of air go into my body. My sight started to blur and the light around my periphery started to fade. I stumbled back onto the couch, never taking my eyes off the shape that hovered before me. And just as I was about to lose sight completely, it erupted from out of itself into a giant black mass that covered the entire wall and sent a blast of air that peeled me onto my couch. And with that, a bellowing, deep, gnarled shout that sounded only vaguely human came at me, reverberating the house and flexing the windows out, as if a bomb had gone off in just that instant. "Lakota!" it screamed, in a half cackle before it vanished. That's the last thing that I remembered. I just woke up on my couch not 10 minutes ago, and the sunlight had started to come through my window. I know that it wasn't a dream, but my chest feels totally fine. The shape, I wish I could describe it better. It was almost like an anti-shape, like a mass of light sucking. It felt like a void, manifest in front of me and calling for my confrontation with existence itself. And Lakota, that bar that I had gone to, I'm sure it was one and the same. I have to find out what it means, and what it has to do with Han and with that story the bartender tried to tell me. Han had to be below Midori. I remember how insistent he was. And I can't help but think that this must have to do with the damn prospecting trip I was on. I remember meeting several people there, but the mood was downright uncanny. I mean, as an environmental researcher, I was always kind of the nerdy guy in the room. My extent of dealing with the government was in writing long, horribly boring grant proposals to secure funding for this or that. Even in methane, the research I found my specialty in, the running joke was that I was the highest paid cow turd observer. And yet, we embarked on this project, what was from my understanding to be just a routine prospecting trip. There was an awful lot of government at every juncture. Before even setting up the trip, I had someone from the EPA reach out to me, and not just some bureaucrat, a real legit agent. He was very guarded about what he needed, except to tell me that the lands in question are in dispute. Funny, I thought. In dispute is usually what they say when they take land that's not theirs. I expected to show up and see protesters, maybe some Native Americans trying to shut us down. But when we got out there, it was barren. They told me that it was adjacent to a reservation, but as far as I could see, it was empty land. And driving out, I realized why. It had all been fenced off. And nobody was trying to get in either. The natives had set up some little towns on the outskirts, but they didn't look too keen on entering it either. Just imagine the picture here. Me, an EPA agent, and two interns standing in what looks like to be an endless expanse of the flattest land that you've ever seen. They told me the ground was in danger of liquefying. That was at least the first iteration of their story. They were concerned with that such a liquefaction the methane could escape and spark, in which case the barren, dried, dead plot of land would burn like a matchbox. So they wanted controlled drilling. They said it was routine, but on this plot, they had run into problems. Problems, I thought. Well, I've heard that one before. I can't tell you how many jobs I've worked where people have gotten methane poisoning, or machines have failed and drilling operations have failed and people have needed to be rescued. That was no big deal. It kinda comes with the job, and I was used to it. But it wasn't until later that I found out what he meant by problems. It was on a different order entirely. I didn't get the full story until much later, but I now know that at least 7 government agents had burned to death just the day before I ever set foot on that land. So much for routine. They never did give me details, and what I know now I went through great lengths to find out. But what I first chalked up to simple methane poisoning. Each victim had expressed blacking out spells while on the land. I now see much differently. Many had written of a black mass that precluded their vision, of a tightness in their chest that lingered even when they went back to their hotels, and of a strange hallucination, a word they couldn't recognize but that they all had expressed hearing. 5 men and 2 women, all erupted into magnificent conflagrations, all ostensibly spontaneously, and I believe now that I know what they saw and I've heard that word for myself. Yet I'm still here. But my time is running out. When I last checked, the timer had dropped to about 30 hours, and it was counting down steadily again. Please, help me. Find any clues you can about the bar. Look into the clues, the drink, anything. I've tried, but my efforts are useless here. I'm running out of time, and so are you.